Today's guest went from selling football jerseys to building a startup that was acquired for more than $50 million.
I paved my own path to a lot of extent. It's really about how hard you want it, how far you're willing to go for it. It takes a lot to discover yourself. Selling football jerseys to my friends in school, that mindset of trying to leverage certain niche or commodity was always in me, like, how do I make money?
Now he's building Pandora, a Web3 agency dedicated to helping crypto companies dominate their niche.
I remember at that point in time, I woke up with my laptop. It was like literally 16 hours of figuring out who do we lay out, how do we pivot, just to survive. And at that point, you face these rejections. When you face these moments where you're like, am I gonna fail at this? Am I going to eventually succeed?
In today's episode, we explore how his early lessons in survival shaped his mindset and why real success comes not just from connecting with people, but from mastering the art of leverage.
What school taught me was survival. Survival means figuring out how to work around things. Being able to connect with people is a skill, but being able to leverage that is an art.
Sahib, welcome to Can't Fake It. Thanks for coming today, man.
Thanks a lot, brother, for having me back here again.
How's the week been for you?
Week's been great. I'd say busy, but very productive. It's always good to have you meet people that you've spoken to online,
Right.
and put a face to the name, connect with them, and just have build that personal relationship.
How do you define a productive event?
Okay, so for me, like I want to go to an event where either I am connecting with someone that I have a particular reason to work with, as in like a particular reason that I want to, either I'm engaging with them because they are one of our partners, and I'm there to just kind of hang out, build my relationship with them, or either they are a potential client, or a potential network that just helps me build my next, stepping stone to, let's say, a potential lead or client that I want to work with. But again, for me, like the other way around is like if you think about a potential event or like a productive event, it's an event that I have to meet or let's say learn from all these smarter people in the room, right? So whether it's a topic that I have not been exposed to, or whether it's just something that I want to learn more from, and that's a productive event for me.
Right. Do you plan for the event like beforehand? Is there like a system that you do?
To be honest, like for me, for these events, like these conference weeks, it's a lot like, hey, which one of our clients are hosting events?
Yeah.
And that's a mandatory. So like that's a no negotiation. We show up, support, we have to be there.
Right.
If it's people that we are meeting, like potential leads, people that we've been talking to, that's like secondary. So like that's like priority number 2. And then obviously like everything else is like, hey, what interesting topics are there around? That let's say I wanted to learn more about what Coinbase was doing. That was kind of something I definitely wanted to go to. And again, if there's any private events that gives, that sort of element of just being able to interact with people one-on-one, I would choose that any day versus going to a club, right? Unless I'm like needed to go to a club event, because I find like those party events, I'm not a very social drinker. I definitely love to party, but it's not something I'd like to go there and have to shout at the top of my voice to network with someone.
Yeah. Like I find myself being more strategic with how I spend my energy with these events.
Absolutely, man.
Because it drains you. Like,
there's only so much you can do within that 12 hours.
Yeah.
You want to be very strategic of who you're speaking to, who you're hanging out with. But again, man, it's like, how can I be part of people that I am learning from, helping them or just somehow being able to leverage each other at some point or the other. But again, not everything's business, not everything's work. So also here to have fun and have, hang out with friends.
Right.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. So the first is, how do you keep learning at this point in your career?
Wow, there's a lot. So thankfully, because we're in this industry where things move on so fast, obviously like being exposed to certain network or let's say circles, or I'd say avenues or channels, like let's say newsletters, it gives you that edge of just being able to learn from a particular type of group of niche or group of people that you want to that represent a particular topic that you're interested in, right? So like for example, for me, we've all heard about stable coins. We all hear about this prediction market. We all hear about, Gamblify. And I feel like a lot of these things have been discussed 6 months ago or like a year ago. All of a sudden now they're the next big thing already, right? And don't get me wrong, like I'm very interested to learn, and I've been absorbing and trying to learn more about it. But and we have very recently seen the perpdex meta, for instance, and like we have been working with perpdex, a client for a while, and it's good to see now things are finally taking off, right? But like for me, it's also like, hey, get deep into what we're doing or what interests me personally, but it's also like, what's next? Like, what's the next big thing, right? So for me, it's like also trying to learn a lot from these funds or people that have been OGs in the space. Like, where's liquidity flowing next, right? So like when you interact with them, you start understanding. So you start learning and put it on your watch list. So whether those are articles, those are thought leaders in the space, in or outside of X or Twitter, whether those are newsletters that people are more very hyper focused on. You start figuring out who are these like thought leaders in the space, and you just follow these guys.
Right.
For example, the other example I would say, like robotics, for instance. Right. For me, personally, that's a very interesting topic. Right? I mean, we've seen AI, we've seen what AI, deaf AI does. We've seen all that InfoFi kind of stuff and what AI can practically do. But like, at the end of the day, like, a lot of people are still speculating, like, hey, you don't need crypto for robotics. For sure. And I think I would probably say you don't need crypto for most of the projects out there. But for me, that's like an interesting topic. And, interestingly, a lot of what we're seeing right now is coming from Web2 products. And, what we're seeing right now is like what the big boys in China are doing. So that's very interesting to see where that meta is, where that entire industry is leading up to.
Right.
So for me, that's like how I kind of keep track and keep tabs on it. And just because like we are very vested into the markets, it's also a part of our nature of like the degen in us or me, but also like our job to keep track of things as well.
Yeah, no, super important to keep up to date. Like the space is moving really, really
So
quickly.
fast, yeah.
So fast. Like
So fast.
it takes a week for everything to change over here.
Wow, but it's also sad at the same time. Like, I feel like the meta, I mean, builders building one thing and having the conviction to keep building is actually very important.
Right.
Because sometimes the liquidity and meta changes so fast. Like you're literally seeing meta move, like liquidity move from one niche to another 2 to 3 weeks max, right? And it can be very discouraging if you're building in something that's literally like the future, but you absolutely don't see, that spotlight shining upon that.
Yeah.
So it's important to kind of like believe in the niche that you're building on until you get that sort of, spotlight, and then, ride that wave hard.
Right. No, I think founder and product fit is very important because the
100%.
conviction won't be there if you
100%.
don't like appreciate or understand or love what you're building. Like,
100%.
you have to stay for the long term. Now, the other question was, so first was learning. Right?
Yeah.
How does Sahib have fun?
For me, well, I'd say fun is like, so, I don't believe, like I wouldn't say I wouldn't believe, but I'd say work-life balance is a bit of a cliche.
Yeah.
Right. And to be honest, like I feel very bored when I'm not working. Right. And that's just like sometimes, when I find myself idle, and there's a lot of things I do when I'm idle as well. Thankfully, I'm also blessed with a very beautiful, blessed with a beautiful child, which I spend a lot of my free time, let's say weekend, with him and my family, obviously. But other than that, fun for me is like hanging out with like-minded people. Paddle is something I've just really dived myself into very recently as well. Yeah, and just I'd say going out for, hangouts, events, coffee, and just exchanging, I'd say, ideas is something I like doing as well. But again, coming back to like the whole balance and work life, for me, it's more like crypto has also blessed us with the freedom to do what we love, with the freedom of the luxury of wherever you want to work, right? So I almost feel like I incorporate work into my life and incorporate my life into work.
Right.
And that somehow doesn't, don't get me wrong, like it's also a double-edged sword because as we discussed, market moves fast. That means, there's luxury, there's freedom, also makes you work almost 24/7 at the same time. Your mind's always switched on. Right. But again, when you're enjoying what you're doing, it feels like play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I love that. It feels like you're in a point that everything's very balanced. I want to dive deep into your journey from the past. Was it Seekster?
Yes.
I knew like during that time it was a very different life you were living. 16-hour days, work days. What was the key takeaway from that whole journey? I mean, I know it was a long one, but like if you were to condense it, distill it into like one learning that you try to give to other people, What would that most important lesson be?
Yeah, for me, look, I always say this, and kind of feel that the journey of building is one that's very lonely, yet you actually have that purposefulness in you, right? Which gives you that sort of drive and motivation to actually achieve something, right? And sometimes you don't need to have the sexiest of the ideas. Sometimes the business idea isn't one that has, it's not going to be one that's going to be applauded by everyone. But like you said, if you have conviction, you have the passion, you wake up every day trying to build that vision out. And a lot of times, there's so many things along that journey that imposes on you those challenges, that gives you second thoughts, that knocks you down hard, and essentially brings about that sort of second questioning in your mind, right? But the big question then comes down to like, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
I think that why has to be very strong. For me, I'll be honest, like I was just sharing this with another friend 2 days ago. I'm blessed with very strong family background. And truth be told, I could comfortably sit down and not do anything, right? Like we own bespoke suits. I mean, we own bespoke clothing, textiles. We own hotels in Bangkok, and I could be very comfortable.
Yeah.
But there's that sort of sense in me that's always kind of wanted to build something, and not only build something, but build something that impacts the world or impacts people around me, right? So that drive for me, like when I started Seekster, that was basically, my vision was always uphold and uplift the quality of standard of living of those blue collar service providers, right? And obviously like bringing about ease and convenience into people's hand, right? I think technology has already proven that, it's always inevitable. Things are going to move so fast. So for me, it's like, how do I build something that will bring impact to people, right? Like a lot of times, people still ask me, are you happy building what you're building today? And don't get me wrong, like, we're in a service business, and we're in a business that actually a lot of people sometimes, especially in the space, shit upon as well, right? Like I say this, if you want an engagement farm, shit on a marketing agency, because everyone has an opinion, everyone has something to say about them. But again, it's also one of those things that literally helps you bridge that sort of value that you would otherwise be missing to get from A to B, right? Now, one could debate and say this is something that is, I'd say a service company is always, there's always a limit. There's always a cap, right, of being able to build a business up to a certain level. And you reach a point where how much more can you scale, right? But that's the sort of challenge that I keep asking myself, and that's the sort of stuff that I keep, challenging myself and see how can we scale from being just another service agency to something way larger, right? And there are things in the work, there are things in the process, there are things that are being stealth launched and tested right now, which I'm very excited about, and hopefully you'll see it soon. But those are the kind of things that gives me that sort of motivation to like keep building something, right?
Right.
Because for me, I'd say, especially in crypto, you could wake up and trade or airdrop farm or whatever you're good at, meme, on-chain trading, whatever, and make money. But somehow that doesn't give me that sort of happiness.
Yes.
That fulfillment. I won't say happiness, fulfillment, right? Because that somehow like that itchiness in me of like building something. I don't know whether it's an ADHD of me of kind of like touching upon different things, but it's just that fulfillment in being able to build something that I know you are using and have gained value out of it. So that's like the kind of stuff, like, I mean, again, sorry, I've went a bit overboard, but the TLDR for me, like from that journey, it's like do something you love, build something. Like I would say everyone should have the gas in them, the balls in them to build something. Like don't be afraid to build something, because, and by the way, like build something doesn't have to be you have to build the next $10 million or $10 billion company. Build something could even be as small as like, build a wipe code a product that could be a SaaS for the next, that automated money income for you. Build your personal brand, build something that can be larger than you. That's what I would say. Like, gives me the motivation to like get back into the arena and keep fighting another day and keep building another day.
Yeah. No, I love what you said about when you earn money from like a crypto trade, it really doesn't hit the same.
No.
Like the gratification of actually building something, putting something in your mind and like putting it into the world, it's so much more different, so much more gratifying.
Yeah.
Now, you came from, so before Seekster, were you in the family business?
Yes.
How, like, I'm really curious, like, were there any key concepts from that type of business that you're still able to apply today?
Yeah, well, I guess, look, for me, I believe ABC, always be closing, but I believe always be curious.
Curious,
right?
Okay.
I feel like a lot of times that curiosity leads to uncharted territories that gives you the opportunity to either learn or either tackle or either succeed in a particular field that you may or may not know that you're good at or explore, right? So I mean, the key principle of me, one, I think I owe it to my, the fact of being daring to go out is my education in India. I was sent to boarding school when I was 10, right? And I was in a boarding school for 7 years. Boarding school taught me survival, right? So, they say this, that if you can live in India, if you can do business in India, you can do business anywhere, right? And that's just the nature. That's because, I mean, so my fellow Indian friends and viewers, and people that be watching this would probably agree that Indians are shrewd. They're smart. They have this way of tackling life in business. Like in India, you almost cannot be nice to get shit done. Right? But what school taught me was survival. And for survival means figuring out how to work around things. Right? So for me, always be curious is something that I've instilled in myself. And that to me is like when you go out and start trying to learn, tell yourself you're just there to learn. You're there to better yourself. And I'd say one more thing, network. Like being able to connect with people is a skill. But being able to leverage that is an art. Right? Because a lot of people sometimes have this huge network of people, but they don't know how to add value to each other. They don't know how to add value to, the person opposite of you, the person that you've just met. And the beauty of it is that when you add value to one person, life gives you back twofolds. So that's always been my mantra. That's always been my ethos, right? So when for me, it's like, how do I keep learning? How to keep, better the level of knowledge, better the level of network, and figure a way out of that intersection of what opportunity presents to you. Right? And because the other thing that I don't know whether it's a weakness, some may say, I don't think too hard before aping into something. Right? Because I feel like you figure out while you do.
Right.
But you will never figure out when you don't do. Right? So for me, it's like, just do it. And you will learn along the way. Because when I started Seekster back in 2015, I had zero knowledge about startup. I had zero knowledge about the tech industry back in Thailand. I came from suits. I was very curious and I wanted to learn. I was fortunate enough to travel with my salesman back then. I never went around. When we used to go for trunk shows or measure people abroad. So part of my business, family business, is like people can't always come to Bangkok. So we actually go outside to Europe, America, Australia, and we measure people up. And we come back, make those suits, and ship it to them. So I was very fortunate enough to go out there with my sales guy. And actually, back then, I didn't act as the owner. I would carry bags. I would be his right-hand guy, taking the orders and just observing and learning. But that slowly built my confidence. When I started talking to like the corporates, big CEOs of Macquarie Bank, PwC, Ernst & Young, all these guys, when we were suiting them up, it builds your confidence. That exposure is very important for people, right? One thing I say, like with crypto people, with Web3 people, it's fun to be behind the keyboard and click all day long, but that interpersonal skill is an asset that you need to develop by getting yourself out there. So that for me was one of the biggest learning. And once I started going out there, once I started understanding, for me it's always like, what sort of opportunities can I develop from there? And I think one of the biggest assets for me is, I think I'm a little bit of a more people's person. I know I can kind of see what sort of dots to connect, how to connect them. And when you just start adding value, that value comes back.
Dude, that was very distilled. I love it. I'm curious. So you went through Seekster. Tell me about the exit, because you go through this long journey of learning, of trials and tribulations, of challenges, 16-hour days, and then suddenly the day comes where your baby, like, it's getting acquired. How was the feeling on that day going through that exit?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because a lot of times when you start a business, you never think that you're going to exit. You think this is your legacy, this is your baby, and that comes with a lot of emotions. And I guess that, but on the hindsight, when you think about it, that's the way a lot of first-time founders think about. Because in fact, a lot of the successful business entrepreneurs, or let's say a seasonal, or let's say the serial entrepreneurs, they build businesses already with a mindset of what sort of exits they're going to make, right? They get into a business knowing how they're going to exit. But for first-time founders, it's the passion. It's the drive. It's like, hey, I want to do this. I found an idea. I think it's the next big thing. I'm going to change the world. And you get very emotional with it. And don't get me wrong, that emotional feeling drives you. That emotional driven feeling actually pushes you. But I think there also then comes a point where you have to acknowledge facts, because there's a big difference between being a sole owner of the business versus being shareholder of the business. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like I was the largest shareholder, but it then eventually becomes a business that, investors invest in you. So there's other stakeholders invested in you. There's outside capital.
Right.
And when you get to that point, one of your biggest, I'd say, responsibilities is, how do you eventually make it to a point where you're bringing back value to your shareholders, right? So the journey starts off very, very different, where you're like, hey, I'm going to here to change the world. This is going to be my legacy business. It's going to be a unicorn. And obviously you start realizing over time, like, hey, as you raise funds and as you keep growing and as you keep raising more funds and the company grows larger in valuation, you are now one integral part of that company where you're answerable to a lot of shareholders. So for me, it's always been like, okay, because it's my first business as well, and I want to prove myself, but I also want to prove to the others that, hey, I can build a business, I can run a business, and a profitable one, right? So for me, it was always like, am I going to eventually exit? How is this going to play out? And boy, when COVID hit, it hit hard. I think obviously, like, I wasn't the only one. It hit the world. Some businesses in the medical field or whatever, like some businesses really, exponentially grew. But for us as a service business, we were hit hard. I remember at that point of time, I woke up with my laptop, slept with my laptop. It was like literally 16 hours of figuring out who do we lay off, how do we pivot, launch different business verticals just to survive. And at that point, I mean, not only that point, but many times in the business, when you face these rejections, when you face these VCs, when you face these moments where you're like, you're not going to make it, right? And then you ask and question yourself, like, am I going to fail at this? Am I going to eventually succeed? But then again, you're like, I didn't come this far to come this far. Then that's when you wake up, grind again, push hard again, take that knock off, but get up another day and fight. But that feeling when when your baby is matured enough to now be able to get that sort of attraction from investors who want to acquire you, you feel very different. You feel like, hey, your baby is now growing up from a baby to infant to whatever you want to call it, teenage or whatever, at that stage. Conversations start becoming very different. And it almost, don't get me wrong, it is victory, right? It is victory to be able to exit, but it's also very important to make sure that it's a victory that humbles you enough to understand, like, that's just one medal in your bag, right? It's not the biggest win. It is a big win, but that's just one of the first stepping stone for something way larger.
You've been through a lot, man. What are you afraid of now?
Wow, yeah. Well, I think there's always two things I'm afraid of. One is I'm a family man now, right? I guess when you have a kid and, when you have responsibility of ensuring that you have sufficient to provide that sort of life to your family, your risk appetite becomes way lesser, right? So if you rewind back 10 years ago, I was at the point where I kept grinding, taking away time from my girlfriend back then, who's my wife now, and always promising her, giving her that hopes that, hey, at some point I will have that time. And that day will come where I can be more free to have the ability to spend more time with you or like our family or our kids. But now let me grind, right? And the grind will keep continuing. But obviously it was when you go, when you're in the battlefield, when you're like all in and you just fire your shots without thinking hard, that's the kind of risk you have, that you can take when you don't have a family.
Yeah.
But now when you're a family man, you shoot your bullets very strategically. So one, obviously, being way less risk averse. Number two is the afraid of being complicit, right? Afraid of being too satisfied to not be able to grind hard, right? I mean, I think it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but one, like I'm just, it's the fear of failing that I don't give back enough or have enough for my family. But the other way is like the fear of not working hard enough and just being too complacent if I were to be at a point where I'm succeeding and I feel I've been fulfilled, right? Because I think at the end of the day, every one of us have a goal, have responsibility, but the magnitude of responsibility and the drive is very different, right? Because like when you have a lot and you have, enough, or let's say enough or a lot, that somehow spoils you.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I always want to be humble enough, have enough, but be humble enough yet to drive myself harder.
It's a balance.
Yes.
It's definitely a balance. I have a question now. Who would you think is the most influential person to who Sahib is today?
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's a lot. I would give it back to a lot of within my, I'd say my mom for sure, right? I would say the drive, the passion to always provide enough to the family and to go above and beyond has always been something that I've grown up and seen. The grind till today, she's very actively contributing to the family and the back end operations to a few of the businesses, but also in generally the backbone of the house. But essentially, that grind in her, that passion to always go above and beyond, has been very motivating for me, right? So I just feel like when I see that quality that has brought around that sort of value to the family and who we are today, has given me that sort of motivation, right? It's like if I look at my life today, and as I keep saying, I'm very comfortable to not have to work. My granddad, when the partition happened and they came to Thailand, the first, as a first generation born as a Thai Indian in Thailand, the hard work was put in by them, right? Like what I am today, I owe it to them, right? Like when you talk about earning money, like stacking those dollars, that's the kind of hard work they have done or he's done, right? So I never want to, let go or take for granted that sort of value that has been given or provided for us, because I think that's again going back to being very complacent.
Yeah. No, I love how your mom has made such a great impact to you and still impacting you until today.
I mean, she was my first angel, and she saw the ups and downs, and of course that's every mom's, I'd say, love and duty. And for me, again, I think it's just a drive to be able to prove to myself, but also prove to people around me, like it's that sort of that success. Once you achieve success, and by the way, I don't mean in any way that I've achieved success, but like once you win that victory lap and you feel that sense of accomplishment, that becomes a bit of an addiction, and you want to do it again and again and again. But I think again comes back to also like the risk appetite becomes very different as you stage in life.
Now that you're a father, what is like the vision of being a successful father to your child? Like, how does that look like?
Yeah, I always ask this to myself, and for me, I think again, the ability to be able to do what you love, but yet have the freedom and the flexibility to do what you love is very important.
Right.
So again, back to my roots, or like to my childhood, I don't think I've spent that much of time with my father, right? Being in a business where you like operating hours are very off, I think that time with your child is very important. For me, I always say this to my wife, it's like I want to do everything that my father wasn't able to do with me. And I mean, I'm not saying in a bad way. I mean, I want to do everything that I couldn't experience with my father with my son.
Yeah.
Right? The ability to drop him or pick him up from school, the ability to take him out for holidays, the ability to take him to a playground or the park on a random evening or afternoon, right? That sort of upbringing is something I aspire to provide, but also at the same time, the ability to have him acknowledge hunger, right? I also don't want to, it's that fine balance between having him understand at the same time that you need to be hungry in life to make it. I think everyone needs to be hungry.
Yes.
And that hunger is what drives you, right? That hunger, that curiosity, like you can't feel full. You need to have that hunger to go out there and hunt, right? So that's one thing that I feel, if I got too complacent, if I get too comfortable, that hunger starts dying. And that's like the fine balance, as I mentioned just now, the fear of having that hunger die.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, it's trying to balance that life of being able to show him that I'm there for him, give him the right upbringing, but also not spoil him.
Yeah. I think that's tough, no? Because
Very tough.
if you're like living a life of abundance, how do you, as his, like your child, you want to provide as much.
Yep.
At the same time, you have to deprive to make them feel that hunger. So
Yep, absolutely. And I think for me, like I have this debate with my wife. I went to a boarding school.
Yeah.
I want to send him to a boarding school,
Yeah.
but my wife wouldn't.
She wouldn't allow.
She wouldn't allow. And maybe to a large extent, I kind of agree as well, because I think the environment in India has also changed a lot now compared to, like, let's say back then in school. But at this point, the very least we could do is, send him there for summer schools, right?
Yeah.
So kind of give him the reality check of staying away from home at a certain age to start being able to understand what life is without having the access to everything in life.
Right. Now that you're like on the road to being like such a great father for your child, going outside of the family unit, what type of legacy would you like to leave with the world?
Yeah, to be honest, like, that's one question I ask myself very often. And I don't, like, that's the one thing that I ask myself on, hey, is what I'm doing today the legacy business that I'm thinking to provide forever? Like, right? I mean, like, I have the family business that we own for the past 7 decades. The real estate, the bespoke clothing company, our brand, which my brother takes care of. But there's always that question of like, what sort of legacy am I leaving behind? But I guess I don't think the answer has to be found today, right? For me now, I guess it's going back to enjoying learning, upskilling, upgrading your network, and take life as it comes. Because I think that opportunity will arise somewhere along the lines. I'm a firm believer of don't overstress it and enjoy life as you go, as long as you are compounding your skills, knowledge, network, right? And be on the lookout for new opportunities. I don't have that sort of legacy business or answer or let's say thought just yet. But I know at some point it will come down to giving him just enough without letting him know that there's more.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's about having him pave his own path.
Right.
Right? Like, I do aspire to bring him into the business world, but I also want him to get the freedom to choose what he prefers or likes to do.
I really love listening to you, Sahib. Like, it's really a lot of value, and I always love hearing your journey. I resonate with a lot of the things you say. I guess for the last thing, I'd like you to talk to a very specific type of person in the audience. Those people who are in a rut, who don't know where to go, or someone who's starting from zero. What would you tell to them?
Well, I mean, again, I'm never going to say like I know it all or let's say I feel you because again, you know, as much as I will say that I paved my own path to a lot of extent, a lot of people can say the other way around that, you know, you did have the luxury to kickstart things. And I think that luxury is important to acknowledge because, you know, it is true and it's a tough world when you say the rich get richer and the poor get poorer because money compounds money, opportunity compounds opportunities. But at the end of the day, like I feel in the era we live today, in the time we live today with the access to knowledge, access to internet, access to network and access to opportunities, it's really about how hard you want it and how far are you willing to go for it, right? So the first thing I'd say is like, get out of your comfort zone, right? Like you have to understand that life is, the bubble around you is not the world. As soon as you get outside the oyster, you understand that there's a lot that you perhaps don't know. And in fact, like it takes a lot to discover yourself. It does take a lot. Like I genuinely believe it's never your first business that will give you that sort of success. And by the way, Seekster wasn't really just my first business as well, but at a larger scale, yes. I mean, I was selling cars, secondhand cars during college days. I was, you know, I don't know if you read my expose as well. I had it in me to kind of do business while I was selling, you know, football jerseys to my friends in school. So that mindset of trying to leverage and arbitrage a certain market or certain niche or commodity was always in me to like, how do I make money? Again, money isn't everything. At this point, my recommendation is acquire and stack those skills, knowledge, and network. And when you do that, start figuring out how can you leverage that knowledge, skills, and network to get to where you want to go. And I always say this, and I will say it again and again, never be afraid of giving value first. Because if you think from a perspective of why am I giving you first and what do I get from that, I believe that's where you are limiting yourself from day one, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're that one person in a room that has provided tremendous value to the room or like the stakeholders around you, you're definitely going to outshine in anything you do, right? That's number one. And again, number two is like with the access to internet and the rest of the world, your biggest leverage is as simple as a camera or a mic or even just getting online or writing, expressing your voice, your opinion, and just connecting with people, right? It's cliche when you say like you're one DM away, you're one outreach away, but I genuinely believe like the day you stop trying is the day you fail. So genuinely start thinking of how you leverage, so one, acquire and stack that knowledge, skills, and network. Two, know how to leverage And 3, like, don't be afraid of reaching out.
Yeah, perfect. Beautifully said. Sahib, always a pleasure listening to your advice, all your thoughts. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And yeah.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
All right.
And at some point, like, I'd love to kind of, circle back a lot of these questions to you.
For sure.
Because I kind of feel that sort of vibe.
Yeah.
That there's a lot for you to share that the world or the rest of, like you said, can't fake it. Right?
Yes.
Can't fake it.
Yeah, I'd love to, man.
Thanks a lot, brother.
Thank you.